Pony Express. Check out their line of penetration testing devices, including the Pwn Pad, Pwn Phone, and Pwn Pro. For enterprises, there's Pwn Pulse, providing continuous visibility into wired, Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth spectrums across all physical locations, including remote sites and branch offices. For all those hard-to-reach places, there's Pony Express. Visit them on the web at ponyexpress.com. In order to deliver the maximum degree of privacy, personal data must be protected without action from an individual. In fact, this requirement is defined in the General Data Protection Regulation, also known as GDPR. What if you could reliably and efficiently build privacy into your information security programs by default? StealthBits Technologies provides solutions that allow data to be collected and used in a manner that achieves GDPR compliance. Privacy by design and by default is not just a GDPR requirement, it's the foundation of StealthBits Technologies. Visit stealthbits.com to learn more today. Gain control of cyber risk with Tenable.io, the first vulnerability management platform built for today's elastic assets like cloud, containers, and web apps. Discover a fresh, asset-based approach that prioritizes vulnerabilities while seamlessly integrating into your environment. And improve ROI with the first elastic licensing approach based on assets, not IP addresses. Tenable.io delivers the data and context you need to secure your elastic attack surface. Start your free Tenable.io trial today by visiting Tenable.io. Welcome back, everyone, to Enterprise Security Weekly. Quick announcement, IT Pro TV's courses now include Computer Hacking Forensic Investigator V9, Kali Linux CompTIA A+ 901, and Accelerated CompTIA Security Plus. Premium annual memberships include all video content as well as access to virtual labs and Q&A forums. For a limited time, get 30% off your monthly membership for the lifetime of your active subscription by visiting itpro.tv/enterprise security and using the discount code ES30. Normally, it's $85.70 a month or $857 per year as well. 30% off just for listening and watching Security Weekly. All righty. Let's dig into the news. Larry and Joff are here with us to talk about the enterprise security news. The first story that I have is kind of interesting. HP has a pocket-sized printer. And this looks like it's an interesting technology. You're probably wondering why it's on this show, but it lets you print out pictures, but it does it in I don't know if you guys had a chance to read the story. I know you're filling in last minute. Let me bring it up here. So it uses zinc paper, which means no ink is required, as zinc technology relies on heat to show the color on the paper. Really cool technology. Now, what's interesting in the enterprise, I think you're going to see this because marketing and HR departments are going to be like, oh, well, they'll find 1,000 uses for this. And it pairs with your smartphone on Bluetooth or NFC. And we all know everyone secures those wireless technologies. So you can both have a field day with that.
Oh, yeah, they sure do. Honestly, Paul, I have not had a chance to read the article. I'm completely guilty because I was definitely a last minute guy. So now I'll throw it over to Larry then. Maybe he'll do better than I will.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but this is great heat-based technology and all this type of stuff. But I wonder what the cost per sheet for something like that is. And
true.
But that said, Bluetooth or NFC. That might not be so bad, because if you think about, what are you exchanging Bluetooth NFC with a printer, and is it connected to anywhere else? I might not be terribly concerned about something like that. I'd be more concerned about the Bluetooth or NFC available on the mobile device that you're using to connect to it.
Correct. Yeah, it's going to force people to enable those technologies. And you're right, Larry, this is primarily a photo printer, so not a lot of sensitive documents going out to this printer. So probably not a huge threat, although neat technology that you'll probably see. And I think Larry's right, it's going to affect mobile security. So this next story highlights one of our favorite terms here on Enterprise Security Weekly, and that's single pane of glass. That's right, Ixia is showcasing some advanced security and visibility technologies, and they say, without advanced network visibility seen through a single pane of glass, organizations put network security compliance mandates and application performance at risk. How's that for a problem statement where Ixia is trying to be the conduit for your single pane of glass? How often do you guys see your customers when you do a pen test, like have that single pane of glass, and they're like, "Oh, look, there's you doing a pen test."
So I've seen it. I'll make one comment. I've seen it where somebody has walked me into, and I won't name any customers, of course, but somebody has walked me into a knock or a sock, pointed up at the pretty single pane of glass, and say, "Look, that's what we show people who want to see that we're doing something cool, but none of us use it."
Yes.
Right? Or that's what we show the C-level people, and then they go back to doing their work with their scripts and whatever else they got going on.
Yeah.
So,
Go ahead, Larry.
I'll argue that the single pane of glass, and you know what happens when you throw a rock at a single pane of glass?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
you get an iPhone.
Yeah. Hey, now.
Yeah,
Never broken one.
Ixia is trying to be that conduit. They're trying to allow you to monitor more of your network. It actually, Ixia stems from, what was the company that HD Moore worked for a while back that did like security testing and stuff? I can't think of the name of it. Anyway, they did a lot of security testing. That's not part
Google.
of Ixia.
Oh, I thought you were thinking about Rapid 7. But...
No, Breaking Point Systems. Breaking Point Systems.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
It was Breaking Point Systems. So they have some really cool technology. We like to poke fun at the marketing. We were talking about this in our previous segment on how you're able or not able to manage your applications. My head was just spinning when I read this one from Gemalto, which comes from their blog. They ensure secure, compliant, and convenient access to cloud-based applications. Their new Cloud Access lets organizations simplify cloud access with single sign-on and optimized security with fine-grained scenario-based access policies and scale cloud adoption. I want to ask you guys, how much are you able to test and attack like cloud-based applications by an organization? Because all of these companies in this space, in the CASB space, are offering all of these authentication mechanisms and management of your cloud-based applications. But really, how big of an attack vector is it?
It's growing because you see the spread. Especially you had in that statement single sign-on as part of that statement. So if we find a situation where there's no multi-factor involved, just a single factor, single sign-on for the creds of that organization, and then we invoke something like password spraying, we just have to learn the API or learn the web calls, whatever it might be, and that is going to be our source of being able to break into that organization from the perspective of getting credentials. And so if that's outward facing on the internet and there's no multi-factor involved, then that is an opportunity for us.
Larry?
Yep, no, I agree with everything what Goff just said there. I have nothing of additional value to add there.
No worries. Next one will definitely hit home with you guys. Tripwire posted an article on the 5 tips to maximize your IT security training. And one of them that I think everyone who's a SANS instructor, certainly, in any kind of instructor, in this space, they say training events fully pull back some of the findings that people lack focus, right? Any trainer can tell you frustrations-ridden stories of the outcome of multitasking. Frustration for the rest of the class when one person falls behind and asks a question you just answered. Frustration for the student that's confused because they missed something. Frustration for everyone when someone misses something important because they just weren't paying attention. Do you guys find this in your classes, and how do you deal with it in your classes?
I'll let Larry go first.
Yeah. So the answer is yes. Do we see this in our classes? Absolutely. There's so many times when we'll be talking in class about something, and I will say, when you go to do the lab, you need to make sure that you do X, Y, and Z. And then when we get to the lab, I even specifically put the notes up on the projector. And when you're on this lab, you need to do X, Y, and Z. And you should be doing this in the next 10 minutes and then discuss it. And then, 10 minutes into the lab, remind them, hey, don't forget when you're doing this, you need to do X, Y, and Z. And invariably, there is 1 to 3 people in a class that said, hey, this isn't working for me, and I did what it says in the book. And I said, well, remember, you needed to do X, Y, and Z. Oh, got it.
Yeah, that happens
invariably. And quite honestly, you have to be pleasant about it. You can't bite their head off or anything like that. You just have to, hey, oh yeah, no, we got to remember we got to do this instead, and you just like play it off like no big deal, and that becomes challenging too, and yeah, so yeah, you got to do it. And it happens. And the sad part is, with rule number 1, I think that is probably the hardest thing on that. And rule number 1 is focus. I think that's probably the hardest thing, myself as a student, to do, given that many of the folks go to training, yet they still have to attempt to make a stab at doing their day job too.
Right. Yeah, and you try and encourage organizations to say, look, if you're going to send someone to training, like let them go do the training. But as you have responsibilities that maybe some other people can't step in and fill, or, you always, when you teach a larger class, certainly there's always, 1 or 2 people that during the class, they're running out of the room because there's some major incident at work. That could be security related. That could be, downtime related, that they have to jump in and help with. So it's hard to get that focus, from your day job, but try to plan accordingly, work with your organization so you can have that focus to be able to learn new things. But you're right, Larry, it's hard.
Yeah, I mean, if I can drop one comment on that, Paul, I statistically speaking, after the last 3 or 4 teachers that I've done, I think it averages out to about 1 in 15 or so, where you might have a student that's struggling, about 1 in 20 that's going to run in and out of class due to the, organizational interruptions. And the organizational interruption problem is really, really bad as an instructor. In fact, either one's a challenge, but the interruption problem, I just feel bad for that person, because it's like, you're being sent to training. You need to be given the space to learn.
Absolutely. So how often do you guys encounter antivirus that actually is difficult to evade? Given that McAfee Labs has just released a report, which I haven't read the whole thing, that's on the 30-year evolution of evasion techniques. Kind of interesting that McAfee is doing this research, but what are you guys' thoughts on evasion techniques today?
It depends what you call the product. If it's truly seriously, if it's truly a traditional AV, I don't think there are any that give me any significant problems anymore. In other words, they're fairly easy to evade. The products that have evolved into heuristics, analytics, and process tracing / reputation stuff, that is starting to become more interesting. So people are evolving in the industry without a doubt with their products, but I think evasion is by and large easier today than it has ever been, as a general comment from a pen tester perspective.
Yep. And Geoff, I'll supplement that with for the mode you said, it's fairly easy to evade. Absolutely. But when you start tying this together with some other technologies, such as like host intrusion prevention, application whitelisting, and any of those types of things, it starts to get a little bit harder. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend not having it for the low hanging fruit and saving users from themselves sometimes, especially if you can get it at a reasonable cost. But you probably have more bang from your buck from some of the other stuff that's going on.
Fantastic. Yeah, that jives. Well, John and I were talking about that last week on the show, and that certainly jives. So I found it interesting. So Intel's collaborating with Team 8 and Elusive on cybersecurity. What I found interesting about this story is a statistic that was in here that says Israel has some 450 cyber startups which receive 20% of the global investment in the sector. I thought it was pretty amazing. Other than that, they didn't have much else in the story.
That's a huge number.
It is.
I mean, it shows you how serious Israel is about promoting the technology. And I mean, from our industry's perspective, I think that's wonderful to see that kind of investment in the industry. So, I mean, other than that, I think I wish it was happening more in the U.S.
Yeah, well, and I think a good number of those 450 are security as well. They say just cyber startups, but there's a good number that's security as well. And I love working with the Israeli-based startups or companies. It's just fantastic. Their passion for security is just awesome. Several of those companies are sponsors of the network, and others we're working with on content and stuff. So I didn't realize the number was that high, but that's really cool.
Yeah, when we've interviewed people, what I find that's really, really fascinating and quite refreshing is just how passionate and how focused they are. The Israeli guys are really, really focused at getting what they need done, and it's great. I mean, it's just great for the industry as a whole.
To round out the news, the Kaspersky has introduced Virus Desk, which allows you to upload files. However, it has a 50 megabyte limit, whereas Virus Total supports up to 128 megabytes. But they do have their own service and a website scanning service as well, which can, they claim, tell you that a website is safe or not. Kind of interesting.
I'm curious, again, I don't want to prolong this too much, but Larry, the question for Larry, how often have you been, or can you think of an example, have you been on a pen test where some sort of malware that you used as part of the test ended up getting uploaded to VirusTotal, and you became tagged, if you like, during your test within a very reasonable short period of time, like 20 minutes or less?
Not so much anymore. It used to happen a lot more often. Maybe not quite 20 minutes, but and this was in some very diligent organizations would start catching like that stuff like that. But it's less and less.
Yeah, and the reason I think it's less and less is because there's a tendency for us not to use binary content as much in pen tests these days.
Yep, and memory residence, stay in memory, never write to disk,
right?
Any of those types of things. So it's making that significantly more difficult.
Yep.
Yeah, interesting. And given that trend that Kaspersky has announced that new service, so.
Yep, I think the one that's been interesting is about the quote website scanner, and they can tell you whether the website is secure and isn't going to compromise your machine, especially given that. That we've seen in the past that it wasn't necessarily like the New York Times website that was the problem. It was one of their advertising providers that wasn't them. And I wonder how they deal with stuff like that, and how deep does the rabbit hole go?
Yeah, and that's a really interesting point, Larry. And I think for enterprises, especially when you get into larger enterprises, there's always some URL that you're going to have to check to see if it's malicious or not. I remember there was a Facebook one that someone got hit by that was on my friends list, and I was investigating the URLs, and like they all checked out clean because it was so new and because attackers can change domain names so easily. I find those services kind of like not useful in the wild.
Yep, and then you start pairing that with some potential for some domain reputation scoring and some of those types of things. And yeah, I question how effective it may be, but until you see it in practice and see how well it does, we have nothing to go on.
Yeah, I think there are better threat intelligence tactics that you can use. And certainly, I think that the reputation is somewhat limited, although when you combine that with other things, there's certainly some great solutions out there to add that into your repertoire, so to speak. So, awesome. Well, Larry and Joff, I believe both will be joining us tonight for Paul Security Weekly, so make sure you tune in for that show tonight. Larry, I'll see you in a little while. Joff, I'll see you again up on the screen.
For me, through the magic of transportation.
That's it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Larry and Joff, for filling in this week on Enterprise Security Weekly. That will conclude this episode. We'll see everyone next time. Thanks for listening and watching.